Hey, this is Mike Allen from Syntax Syndicate. This video is part of our Diving into Development Bootcamp series. So we need a way to get your work onto your hosting account. There's a handful of ways to do this, but by far the most popular way is using an FTP tool. So FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol, and essentially it's just a standardized way for your computer to communicate with the web server which is hosting your account. So one of the most popular tools is FileZilla for a few reasons. One, if you are working in an environment where you're jumping between a PC and testing on a Mac, or you're on a Mac testing on a PC, or even if you're on Linux, Ubuntu, FileZilla supports all these environments. So if you utilize this program and you're jumping between platforms, you're always going to see the same interface from a user experience standpoint, very similar. I'm going to show you what this looks like on OS X a little later in the video so you can see that consistency. It's also open source, it's free. There are a ton of paid-for FTP solutions out there, but nuts and bolts under the hood, they're fairly, identical. You're just paying for user interface and a prettier application in many cases. So I also want to show you another tool called WinSCP. Now I don't use it very often, but I want to show you how similar these programs look, and you'll see that as you evaluate tools. So once you get the hang of using one of these applications, it's almost like riding a bike. You can jump onto another one if need be and know essentially what you're looking at. So for FileZilla, what you're going to want to do is head over to filezilla-project.org, and down here in the center you'll see Download FileZilla Client. That's what you want. Once you enter that section of the site, you can select which operating system you're on. Now I've already downloaded it for Windows. And I've installed it. So here's the setup. I'm going to go ahead and launch it. And what we're looking at here is a pretty lean interface. Over on the left side, we've got our local view, which is the files located on my computer at this point. On the right side, what we're going to see here shortly is what's out on the web server. We see nothing now because we're not connected to anything. So what we want to do is give FileZilla a little bit of information so we can make that connection and ultimately move some files over. So the site manager over here on the left, go ahead and click on that, and you'll see this My Sites kind of dialog. What we're going to do is select New Site, and then you're going to enter your hosting FTP credentials that you either received in your hosting account sign-up email, or you can probably log into your control panel and get this information. Every hosting account comes with one. So I'm going to go ahead and type in the credentials for Syntax Syndicate. Rather than anonymous, what I'm going to do is select Ask for Password. Very important. You'll see why in a minute. And then once this information is in, essentially I can go ahead and connect. Now, as soon as I try to connect, it's going to ask for a password. You want to set it to ask for password in case you walk away from your computer and somebody comes over, or your computer's stolen. You don't want anybody to be able to access this information because if they have this, they could essentially take your site down, or even worse, replace it with something malicious or obscene. You want to be very careful, especially if you're holding on to client FTP credentials. You'll certainly lose the client if their website's jeopardized. So I'll go ahead and type in my password here and hit OK. And I've set up a directory out on the Syntax Syndicate domain just for this video. So I'm going to go into Web Content, and over here on the right is what you would consider the root directory of the website. So this is what the users are seeing when they go to my site. If I go into this temporary directory that I created, you're not going to see anything. What we're going to do is upload or transfer a file to this folder and then browse to it using Firefox or any browser. So what I'm going to do over on the left here is under desktop, if you saw the directory structure and naming convention video, this folder might be familiar to you. Here we're simulating, an agency side environment or a freelance environment where we're dealing with multiple sites. What I can do is I can just go into this folder here. I went ahead and set up a file within client name A, project name A, and then htdocs. And as soon as I select that folder, it's going to show me what's inside that folder. And you'll see this page.html file, which is just a blank page essentially that says FTP testing or something like that. All I'm going to need to do here is just drag and drop this over. and you'll see it's going to buzz through the credentials, it's going to do the official handshake, and it's going to allow us to transfer this file. Now, once this is in place, what I can do is head over to the site. And you'll see testing FTP transfer. So the file did indeed transfer. Now, it would be kind of convenient if some of that information was retained within the FTP tool itself. You don't want to have to sit there and type in ftp.blablabla.com, your username and your password each time. Now, the password you do want to withhold, but you can make it very convenient to connect by creating a bookmark here in FileZilla. So I'll just click back on this, and new site's not very descriptive here. That's not really a great name, so I'll name that to syntax test. Now, this is just the bare bones connection information that I've set up. Now, what I can do is create a bookmark, and what it's going to ask me is, hey, where do the files reside on your computer, and where do they reside out on the web server? So for the local directory, I'm going to name this syntax bookmark, sure. For the local directory, these folders are just sitting out on my desktop, which is not a good idea. You don't want your work sitting out on your desktop, but I don't want to waste your time by browsing through a ton of folders through my computer. So I'm going to bounce into that project name A, htdocs. I'm in client name A, and I'm going to select htdocs, because remember, we wouldn't want to upload assets or very heavy design files and things like that typically. All we're focusing here on is the files that are going to be served to the end user. So I'll go ahead and select htdocs and hit OK. And for my remote directory, I already know the directory structure out there. It's almost certainly going to be a little different than what you're seeing, depending on where your hosting account is. So I already know mine's web-content, and I name the folder temporary. So now, if I hit OK, I can go up to this bookmarks tab. Well, actually, let me close out FileZilla so you can see how this would work if you just sat down and you needed to move some files. I'll go ahead and launch FileZilla. I can go right over to bookmarks. I can hit my syntax bookmark. It's going to ask me for my password. I connect, and I'm already in the folder over here. And over here on the right, our web server view, I'm already into that directory. And the reason I'm into that directory and I didn't have to navigate to it is because we set that directory path with the bookmark. Now, once you're dealing with a lot of clients or you're bouncing through a lot of projects, you're gonna collect a lot of FTP information. So it's very convenient to have a nice way to keep them organized. Again, another tool that's somewhat popular is WinSCP. Again, I don't use it very often, but I want to show you how similar these things are. So I've created essentially the equivalent of a bookmark in WinSCP, and if I go ahead and hit login, it's going to ask me for my password. And what you'll see is a very similar view here. Over on the left, we've got our local environment, which in this case is just my desktop sitting there. And over on the right, we've got the web server. And if I double click on web and content and temporary, we'll see that there's my page.html file. So there's a lot of tools out there. Again, both of these are open source. FileZilla is definitely a great option. Now, once we start working with Aptana Studio and Dreamweaver, both of those applications have built-in FTP capabilities, but oftentimes it's very clunky. Those applications weren't developed specifically for dealing with transferring files to a web server. So, working with an application that's specific to that purpose can be a little bit easier to work with and cause less headaches. So I told you before that I'm going to show you what FileZilla looks on OS X. So let me put this in full screen. Now I've got FileZilla installed down here. If I go ahead and open it, you can see almost identical. In fact, if I pull this away a little and launch FileZilla over here, you can see that on the PC, in this case Windows 7, and OS X, from a UI standpoint, they're almost identical. So again, it's a tool that you can use on just about any operating system. and it's going to be the same experience, which is great because, you know, if you can save 5 minutes, you know, 10 times a day, you know, that's a lunch break. So the last thing I wanted to show you was FileZilla Portable, which allows you to install an instance of FileZilla on a jump drive. Now, I've got a USB drive here. I named it Hop. It's only a gig. It's not really a jump, just a little bit of hop. And if I take a look in here, there's nothing in here. Now, FileZilla Portable can be downloaded at portableapps.com. And here's the URL for it. There's a lot of portable applications you can do this with, including OpenOffice, which is a complete, you know, Office app, very similar to Microsoft Office. There's HTML, PHP development tools that you can do the same. It's nice to have an instance of this application on a jump drive. You know, throw it in your glove box in case, you know, you leave for work early and somebody calls you and says, oh, you know, the sky is going to fall if you don't get this edit in. Or you're at another person's house and you need to transfer files for whatever reason. Maybe you want to show them something, or you move stuff up to your hosting account when you are at home and you need to transfer it down onto their machine in a secure way. Quite often, if you're jumping onto another machine, you typically don't have administrative rights, which are essentially needed to install software. So it's not really a matter of having a machine, but if you've got this on a USB drive, you can be assured that, you know, you can pop it in and run it. And in this case, I didn't pre-install this. I wanted to kind of go through this one. It's really straightforward as well. Again, no bloatware. It's not going to try to sneak on some kind of antivirus application or anything like that, or a browser toolbar. But the important thing here is when it asks you for the destination folder, you want to make sure that you're selecting that jump drive, or in my case, Hop, and go ahead and install. And again, just throw this in your glove box, put it on your keychain, however, you know, you want to do it. But it's really convenient having this. Now, you don't want to store, you know, any of the credentials on here because it's very easy to lose USB drives. Extremely easy for me anyway. But you know, they're cheap, and you know, it's a nice way to have, you know, a portable way to transfer files. So again, the application itself is identical. Even off this USB drive, and again, I could eject this drive, jump onto another machine, and run it no problem. So I hope this kind of sheds some light on how you typically move files over to a web server, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next video. Thanks, bye.